Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me share a quote with you. The great Les Brown once said, "You can't see the picture when you're in the frame." If you felt stuck in your fitness, mindset, or life as a whole, head down to the link in the show notes and reach out to learn more about Project Endure coaching so that we can help you step outside of the frame and bridge the gap between who you are now and who you want to be. We can't wait to hear from you. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast. This is a bonus episode with me, Joe Rinaldi. If you're listening to this when it's being released, we are on the precipice of a new year. We're about to enter 2025. This podcast will be different from some of the others as it'll be a look back on some of the lessons, thoughts, and reflections from 2024 in an effort to regroup and be intentional with how we move forward into 2025. This past year has been full of continued growth for Project Endure, and at times it's moved at a pace that feels hard to keep up with. We've coached hundreds of clients, touched thousands of people in person, and reached tens of thousands through the podcast. For those new to the podcast, we're an organization focused on helping others find strength in their struggle, and our motto is do hard things. I hope that you'll stick around and consider how the points to come are applicable to your own life in this season. Before we jump in, I want to share the deepest level of gratitude that I can express. The support that we've received over the past 3.5 years has been encouraging, overwhelming, and so appreciated. We wouldn't be who we are without you. And if you're listening to this, I consider you a supporter of what we're building, and having your attention is not something I take for granted. The intention of this episode is to add as much value as possible, and I'm confident that the coming minutes will have something for everyone. I've taken the time to think through the points that I'll be sharing, and they're all things that I've needed to hear. In other words, this is me talking to me, and I hope that some or all of this resonates with you. The following are in no particular order, but will, without a doubt, begin to blend together because ultimately, the lessons of this life can't be separated in practice, just thought. With that being said, let's get into it. Soul work is slow work, and better is not always visible. Self-improvement doesn't need to be shared with the world in order to be valuable. Most often, the deepest work that we do on ourselves never gets seen by the outside world. As Rumi once said, maybe you are searching among the branches for what only appears in the roots. Or as Anita Morjani once said, I believe that the greatest truths of the universe don't lie outside in the study of the stars and the planets. They lie deep within us, in the magnificence of our heart, mind, and soul. Until we understand what is within, we can't understand what is without. In a world full of people seeking external validation, consider that you might need to look deeper if you want to grow better. Hard work works. The work is the reward. It's not about the outcome. It's about who you become in the process. Winning isn't about getting something. It's about becoming someone. The hard work will speak when the time is right, And as Damian Lillard once said, if you want to look good in front of thousands, you have to outwork thousands in front of nobody. The magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. Again, winning isn't about getting something, it's about becoming someone. Like Raymond Teller once said, sometimes magic is just someone spending more time on something than anyone else might reasonably expect. Spend your life working hard on the person you're becoming because that's the output that matters. You can't rush the parts of you that need time. If I were to plant a seed outside, it would be ridiculous for me to be upset that that seed hasn't grown into a full plant the very next day. And that's because we all understand that seeds need time. They need good soil. They need water and they need sun. There's a level of patience that is built into the expectation around a plant sprouting from a seed. And yet, when we have a seed of thought sown into our minds, we can get so frustrated when the change doesn't happen in that moment, that same day, that same week. We want instant gratification, but we have to understand that just like the seed doesn't grow into a plant overnight, neither do we change in that same time. It takes time. We need to be patient with ourselves, and we need to be persistent in pursuing what matters most. Some things just take time. And one thought that has helped me wait well is that we are all right where we are supposed to be, even if it doesn't feel like it. In the words of Christine Kane, sometimes when you're in a dark place, you think you've been buried, but you've actually been planted. Commitment can't exist without doubt. If it was a sure thing, there would be no need for commitment. If you're experiencing doubt, know that it's a chance to keep your word as you step into the unknown. As Vince Lombardi once put it, the relationship between commitment and doubt is by no means an antagonistic one. Commitment is healthiest when it is not without doubt, but in spite of doubt. Also, the prize doesn't go to the fastest person. It goes to the person who slows down the least. Endurance is an underrated skill because in the short term, it doesn't look like much is happening. As Thomas Carlyle once said, endurance is patience concentrated. Last thought on this: commitment requires us to place ourselves in uncomfortable places in order to grow. Like Napoleon Hill once said, the strongest oak of the forest is not the one that is protected from the storm and hidden from the sun. It's the one that stands in the open where it is compelled to struggle for its existence against the winds and rains and the scorching sun. Embrace emotions, act on principle. It's important to feel the spectrum of emotions that come with the human experience. At the same time, you won't get to where you want to go without doing things that you don't feel like doing. Discipline, like commitment, is imperative to a meaningful existence. Discipline is self-love because it involves choosing what you want most over what you want now. Feel what you need to feel and then do what you need to do. This paragraph from Hal Elrod sums it up well. He said, "Those who only do what they feel like don't do much. To be successful at anything, you must take action even when you don't feel like it, knowing it is the action itself that will produce the motivation you need to follow through. When you value your integrity at the highest level, living in alignment with your word and following through with your commitments, no matter what, there are no limits to what you can create for your life. However, When you make excuses, justify doing what is easiest, and choose the path of least resistance, you will live a life of mediocrity, frustration, and regret. Live with integrity as if your life depended on it, because it does. As you process emotions, remember that you are not your emotions. As Friedrich Nietzsche once said, beware that when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster. For when you gaze long into the abyss gazes also into you. Those who dance are considered insane by those who can't hear the music. People might not understand the vision you have or hear the music you're dancing to. That's okay. It's better to be alone than to be surrounded with the wrong people. What's crazy now will become cool in due time. Stick to your plan and do what makes you come alive. Building Project Endure has been an exercise in just this, sticking to our values and letting people come to us over time. Like Mario Quintana once shared, if you spend your time chasing butterflies, they will fly away. But if you spend your time building a beautiful garden, they will come to you. Be authentic and you'll attract the right people. Like Nipsey Hussle once said, if you look at the people in your circle and you don't get inspired, then you don't have a circle. You have a cage. One more quote here from Friedrich Nietzsche, who said, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. Doing hard things isn't always what you think it is. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't going further, pushing harder, or chasing something bigger. Sometimes the hardest thing is recognizing that you've gone too far, slowing down, and letting go of who you were to become who you're meant to be. Sometimes, though, the hard thing is having the awareness that life can be brutal and then choosing to be up for the challenge. Again, from Friedrich Nietzsche, the most intelligent men, like the strongest, find their happiness where others would find only disaster. In the labyrinth, in being hard with themselves and with others. In effort, their delight is in self-mastery. In them, asceticism becomes second nature, a necessity, an instinct. They regard a difficult task as a privilege. It is to them a recreation to play with burdens that would crush all others. Before we move on from this section, just remember that hard is relative, both between people and also between seasons. What might be hard for you now might be easy for you later. What might be hard for your neighbor might be easy for you now. We're all fighting battles that most others can't see. We're all here doing the best that we can, and you never know who's going through their own hard on any given day. So if nothing else, be gentle, be kind, and be the reason that someone smiles. Leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of people, loving them well, and lifting them up. Lifting others up is part of what makes a great leader, and believing in those around us goes a long way. As Johann von Goethe once said, if you treat an individual as he is, he will remain how he is. But if you treat him as if he were what he ought to be and could be, he will become what he ought to be and could be. Leadership isn't something you are given. It's not an idea that can be confined to a title. It's something that we do, and it's a way that we live. As Lao Tzu once said, a leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, we did it ourselves. In other words, if you want to be a leader, empower others and don't care about the credit. You imprison yourself if you think of yourself as a noun. Being consistent does not mean being rigid. Being consistent means being able to adapt in order to get the work done. In order to thrive as humans, we can't resist change. As Ursula Le Guin once said, what goes too long unchanged destroys itself. The forest is forever because it dies and dies and dies, and so it lives. There was a season of life where I thought that being strong meant being rigid, and it doesn't. Being adaptable and relentless is strong. And that's because change can sometimes make us feel weak. In order to build ourselves up over time, we must first break ourselves down. And as it's been said, it's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than think your way into a new way of acting. Change requires action, and nothing changes if nothing changes. Balance isn't something that you find and maintain. It's fluid and elusive. Instead of finding balance, realize that life is about managing seasons of imbalance. Life is a dance between extremes. It's ever-changing and dependent on the music. The goal isn't to plant a flag in the ground and stand still. The purpose is to create something beautiful with our imperfect steps. Like Mark Twain once said, what is joy without sorrow? What is success without failure? What is a win without a loss? What is health without illness? You have to experience each if you are to appreciate the other. There is always going to be suffering. It's how you look at your suffering, how you deal with it, that will define you. It's also been said that interested people watch obsessed people change the world. If you want to be exceptional, you will have to endure seasons where you are the exception. In other words, you have to be willing to make sacrifices without losing what's most important to you. You also don't need to be extreme if you have no desire to. In other words, if the previous few points didn't raise your heart rate because they didn't light you up, then ignore this point and be content. Because the truth is that more isn't always better. And being content is a very, very hard thing for most of us. To reflect further here, just remember the words of Henry David Thoreau, who said, "The cost of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it." Life is about and, not or. Different things can coexist. For example, you can feel excited and sad. You can feel joyful and disappointed. You can feel multiple things at the same time. What if life isn't about finding happiness, but instead about experiencing it? The highs and the lows, the twists and the turns. Life is all about contrast, and you can't be strong if you've never felt weak. This quote from Albert Camus sums it up well. He said, "In the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. I realized through it all that in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy, for it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me, there's something stronger, something better, pushing right back." The struggle is beautiful, and the contrast allows us to choose what we want to become. Like it's been said, life is not about choosing one thing over another. It's about integrating both, the light and the dark, the joy, and the sorrow to make us whole. Resilience doesn't mean never breaking. Sometimes it means falling, failing, breaking, and shattering all over the ground, and then choosing to pick up the pieces and having the courage to build again. Let me add this. When it comes to building anything, business or otherwise, the simple act of building invites the risk of collapse. There is no action without risk. There is no success without the chance of failure. There is no meaning without the possibility of loss. Life is so fragile, and that's what makes it so precious. We have to be willing to endure the slow walk toward a better life while embracing the ups, downs, ebbs, flows, twists, and turns. As it's been said, the lotus is the most beautiful flower, whose petals open one by one, but it will only grow in the mud. In order to grow and gain wisdom, first, you must have the mud, the obstacles of life, and its suffering. The mud speaks of the common ground that humans share, no matter what our stations in life. Whether we have it all or we have nothing, we are all faced with the same obstacles: sadness, loss, illness, dying, and death. If we are to strive as human beings to gain more wisdom, more kindness, and more compassion, we must have the intention to grow as the lotus and open each petal one by one. You never know what someone else is going through. Kindness doesn't cost anything, and a simple smile can change a life. Sometimes we need to be vulnerable first in order to make someone else feel safe enough to do the same. We're all going through something, and there's no shame in asking for help. In fact, admitting that we need assistance might be one of the strongest things we can do. Like Connor Fronta once said, "Let your smile change the world, but don't let the world change your smile." Again, go be the reason someone smiles. Being strong sometimes looks like surrendering, letting go of who we once were in order to become who we need to be, letting go of what no longer serves us in order to create space for what aligns, letting go of what we can't control to open up bandwidth to control what we can. Sometimes being strong can feel like being soft. Just remember that we can all do hard things without hardening. Also, being strong looks like stripping ourselves of ego. I'll let you guess where these next two quotes come from. Message me if you're curious, and I'll recommend a great resource. The first is: the only real failure is abandoning your principles. Killing what you love because you can't bear to part from it is selfish and stupid. If your reputation can't absorb a few blows, it wasn't worth anything in the first place. Second, work is finding yourself alone at the track when the weather kept everyone else indoors. Work is pushing through the pain and crappy first drafts and prototypes. It is ignoring whatever platitudes others are getting, and more importantly, ignoring whatever platitudes you may be getting, because there is work to be done. Being strong means showing up and doing the work that needs to be done. We all have hard days, and while showing up isn't everything, it counts for a lot. Like John Welborn once said, training and life are a lot like moving a big pile of dirt. Some days you have a shovel and some days you have a spoon, but as long as you're moving dirt, that's all that matters. Showing up creates space for things to happen. Luck is real, but in order to experience luck, we need to be present. No one ever stumbled across great opportunities while standing still. So be intentional with the areas of life that you want to make progress, and start small. Consistent incremental progress compounds over time, or in other words, little by little, little becomes a lot. Like Albert Einstein once said, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. What we want is on the other side of hard. The best version of who we can be is on the other side of discomfort. Like Franklin Roosevelt once said, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. When you're pursuing potential, understand that it'll be painful. And that pain is a privilege because there are so many people who will never and can never experience it. When things get hard, remember that this is what you asked for. Every challenge, struggle, and setback is a chance to learn a lesson. The hardest days are the best repetitions to practice the kind of person we want to become. Remember that hard is relative and there is no strength without struggle. In the words of Alexis Carrel, man cannot remake himself without suffering, for he is both the marble and the sculptor. Be a good friend in everything that you do. I hope that what makes me a good coach is, in fact, that I strive to be a great friend. You need to be there for those around you with care and compassion before you can serve them with skills. However, sometimes we need to be selectively selfish in order to be sustainably selfless. And that's a lesson I continue to learn. Saying no to one thing is saying yes to all other possibilities. Saying yes to one thing is saying no to all other opportunities. Like Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded. Remember that every stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet, and we're all just one person away from a completely different life. So go hold that door, send that text, offer that support, or ask for help. You never know where it'll go. Every choice, big and small, changes the person we're becoming. As Bob Goff once said, we're all still rough drafts of the person we're becoming. Our choices are the only thing that we are in complete control over. And therefore, our choice is our power. As Lao Tzu once said, if you do not change direction, you may end up where you are heading. The other thing to be aware of is that not choosing or not changing is still a choice. Once again, nothing changes if nothing changes. Big doors swing on small hinges. Sometimes good enough is good enough. And sometimes the details matter a lot. Don't overlook the importance of small decisions. I also think that at the end of our lives, we'll look back and realize that some of the small moments were some of the moments that mattered the most. As Lisa Turkhurst put it, big things are built one brick at a time. Victories are achieved one choice at a time. A life well lived is chosen one day at a time. Don't be a lazy, ambitious person. If you say that you want something, go and take actions that match those words. Big dreams without subsequent action are just dreams. As Les Brown once said, the graveyard is the richest place on earth because it is here that you will find all of the hopes and dreams that were never fulfilled, the books that were never written, the songs that were never sung, the inventions that were never shared, the cures that were never discovered, all because someone was too afraid to take the first step, keep with the problem, or determined to carry out their dream. As Ralph Waldo Emerson put it, good thoughts are no better than good dreams if you don't follow through. Go after what you want because you only get to do this once. You will never have more time than you do right now in this moment. and you will always have excuses to make if you want to make them. So, if not now, when? Under promise, over deliver. Be selective with what you say yes to so that when you say yes, you can over deliver. Remember that if your actions don't live up to your words, you have nothing to say. Also, keep in mind that it doesn't feel good when our thoughts, words, and actions aren't in alignment. So be intentional with what you give attention to. Be purposeful with what you speak into the world, and be consistent with how you follow through. At baseline, you are enough. It might be a hard concept to grasp, but it's true. You have value just as you are, and accomplishment won't make you anything more. You are enough, and you are so loved just as you are. It's so important to realize this because we are the one person we can't escape. Like it's been said, you don't need anyone's permission to be yourself, and no one is you, and that is your power. Endurance without direction is exhaustion. Endurance with direction is resilience. Like James Watkins once said, a river cuts through rock not because of its power, but because of its persistence. Be persistent in a similar direction over a long period of time. Remember that being patient doesn't mean being passive. Invest in the process without becoming attached to the outcome. At its core, endurance requires patience and finding happiness as we go. As cliche as it is, it's all about the process and not about the product. When exhaustion kicks in, remember these words from Steve Goodyear, who said, "Those who overcome great challenges will be changed and often in unexpected ways. For our struggles enter our lives as unwelcome guests, but they bring valuable gifts. And once the pain subsides, the gifts remain. These gifts are life's true treasures, bought at a great price, but cannot be acquired in any other way." Expectations are dangerous. When we set expectations, we then need that threshold to be met in order to experience happiness. Don't set expectations on things that you can't control. Instead, set standards for how you operate and let others rise to those standards. Like it's been said, you get what you tolerate. So refuse to tolerate less than your worth. When it comes to expecting anything out of life, I think we all need to recognize that things often won't go as we plan them. Like Catherine May puts it, we are in the habit of imagining our lives to be linear, a long march from birth to death in which we mass our powers only to surrender them again, all the while slowly losing our youthful beauty. This is a brutal untruth. Life meanders like a path through the woods. We have seasons when we flourish and seasons when the leaves fall from us, revealing our bare bones. Given time, they grow again. Speaking of danger, it's not what you think it is. The longer you wait to confront fear, the harder it becomes and the more life it steals. It's been said that fear is a mile wide and an inch deep. It looks like an ocean until you step out into it. There's no outrunning the things that scare us. And if you're not convinced, take a look at these words from Orson Marder, who said, "Obstacles are like wild animals. They are cowards, but they will bluff you if they can. If they see you are afraid of them, they are liable to spring upon you. But if you look them squarely in the eye, they will slink out of sight." Energy and attitude are contagious. In a world more worried than ever about catching things, we tend to overlook that energy and attitude are the most contagious things that exist. So be careful with what you surround yourself with and with what you're consuming. Like Zig Ziglar once said, life is an echo. What you send out comes back. What you sow, you reap. What you give, you get. What you see in others exists in you. Bring the energy that you want to see more of in this world. Our environments influence us, and it's up to us to choose our environments in accordance with who we want to become. We must also be careful not to absorb the opinions of others as truth. As Don Miguel Ruiz once said, don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. Great things take time. Life is a long game. Ready is a decision, not a feeling. And once you choose to get started, you need to be willing to endure the roller coaster that follows, the ebbs and flows of life. There will be down days, but it's in those lows that showing up carries even more weight. Just like it's sound advice to buy the dip in the stock market, it's important to invest into ourselves when we're at the low points. That's how you get the biggest returns. Make adjustments, not excuses. Collect good people along the way. That's what Project Endure is at our core. A bunch of good people who see value in doing hard things to grow further together. Remember that every stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet. And like Steve Jobs once said, overnight success stories take a long time. Talk less, listen more. Time is one of our most valuable assets. Respect others' time through being direct in communication. Say what you need to say and understand that how someone else responds is a reflection of their internal state. In a world full of content consumption happening through screens, most people feel less seen than ever. Making someone feel seen, heard, valued, and cared for is easier and more impactful than you realize. Be present, be curious, and listen. Every person is a book you've never read and a movie you've never seen. Perspective is powerful. Change your mind, change your life. People won't always understand you based on their perspective. The need to be understood is one of the most crippling things in the world. Play your game, run your race, and be the person only you can be. Being authentic is where your power is. Also, don't forget to be here now. It can be easy to get lost in looking forward to the big, exciting things that lie ahead. Remember the words of Robert Brault, who said, "Enjoy the little things, for one day you may look back and realize they were the big things." So, be willing to be misunderstood and be willing to kill the ego with each step. As Dean Karnazes once said, with each footstep comes a slow diminishment of self, the prickly edges of ego whittled down until something approaching the divine emerges. This builds character, but it also exposes it. We learn about ourselves. We gain deeper insights into the nature of our character, and we are transformed by these things. To know thyself, one must push thyself. If you want to gain perspective, go do hard things. Extremes can be dangerous. The same qualities that help us excel can be the same ones that break us down when left unchecked. In other words, the extremes can be a dangerous place. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. Instead of being someone who lives at the extremes, be someone who goes all in on what matters most. It's been said that balance is not something you find, it's something you create. To me, again, life is about managing seasons of imbalance, and we must always make an effort to come back toward the middle when being too extreme threatens the loss of the most meaningful things. Unmade decisions are burdens. When the consequences are low, take action fast. When the consequences are high, take action slow. Sometimes slow is fast because slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Have the courage to make decisions and see them through. The great Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Whatever course you decide upon, there's always someone to tell you that you are wrong. There are always difficulties arising which tempt you to believe that your critics are right. To map out a course of action and follow it to an end requires courage." Life is so much bigger than us. We are each small, but not insignificant. Our decisions send ripples out that impact more people than we'll ever know. And for that reason, we're each important. As it's been said, there are no small roles, just small actors. As Tish Oxenrider once said, people are willing to be brave when they admit their smallness within the enormity of the world. And the best way to understand our smallness is to leave our comfort zones and start exploring, one foot in front of the other. Problems are a privilege. The rich man has many problems. The sick man has just one. Having the bandwidth to consider many problems is a privilege. Here are the words from Arnold Schwarzenegger to drive it home. The pain you hold is yours. There is not a single pain quite like it. Nobody else on God's green earth can feel this pain or have the indescribable feeling of pride you will have when you overcome it. This pain is not your curse. This pain is your privilege. Not all problems are bad. Some problems come to clear our paths. All problems present opportunities to practice being the person who we want to become. Speaking of becoming, we become the stories that we tell ourselves, and our words hold power. We are each holding the pen. Be intentional with the words you write. Understand there's a big difference between the phrases "I can't" and "I won't." Be careful where you place periods and where you place commas. There's a lot of power in the word "yet." You might not be where you want to be yet. It was Og Mandino who once said, "I will love the light for it shows me the way, yet I will endure the darkness because it shows me the stars." In this chapter of life, the darkness exists to illuminate the stars because the truth is, without the dark, we can't see the light. The stories we tell ourselves bring us closer to or further from our potential, and that matters for a meaningful life. As Abraham Maslow once shared, if you plan on being anything less than you are capable of being, you will probably be unhappy all the days of your life. What got you here won't get you there. New seasons require new strategies. Find problems and focus on solutions. Even though life will change, you will change, and your strategies will change, one thing holds true. When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too. That's from Paulo Coelho. Here's a phrase that I've come to love. Talking about a problem without proposing a solution is called complaining. When it comes to getting where you want to go, make mistakes, make adjustments, and make an effort, and then repeat. Just don't make excuses. Every decision we make is a small experiment because in the end, it's all about taking action to learn more about the world we live in and about ourselves. And ideation without execution is just hallucination. Just because you're weary doesn't mean you're weak. If you're pursuing potential, fatigue and failure are part of the process, not the opposite of it. Learn to rest, not quit. You can't lose if you don't quit. Stay the course long enough in order to stumble across good fortune. Put in enough reps to trip over opportunities. We all have so much more potential than we ever tap into, and most people give up much too soon. Like William James once said, most people never run far enough on their first wind to find out they've got a second. Give your dreams all you've got, and you'll be amazed at the energy that comes out of you. Just remember, it's healthy to ask for help, and seeking support doesn't mean you're not strong. We don't have to bear the burdens of life alone. You will never have it all figured out. None of us will. Each moment is brand new, and we have no idea what's coming next. Life is about finding contentment in the midst of uncertain circumstances. It's about choosing calm within the chaos. People are so afraid that their effort will be wasted if they lack specific direction. The truth of it is, most people have no idea what they're doing. We'll all be figuring it out for the rest of our lives, and hard work is never wasted if the work itself makes us better. Taking action without answers is what helps us get clear. Let each step reveal the next. And if you're not sure what to do, just do the next right thing. Being creative requires the courage to think different. Inspiration is everywhere, and our intuition is powerful. However, the thing about intuition is that it whispers, and we need to practice the skill of not only hearing it, but acting on it. Being curious is imperative when it comes to being creative, and we must ask good questions. Creation requires disruption, and in order to make a change, we must disrupt the normal flow of our lives in both big and small ways. Like it's been said, only dead fish go with the flow. And if you're worried about what other people will think of you, just remember that most people are thinking about themselves, and we are all projecting what our own inner kingdom says out into the world. Like David Foster Wallace once shared, people spend the majority of their lives living anywhere but where they are. So just be here now. Listen to your intuition and don't worry about what others think of you, because there's a good chance they're not. Quick side note, all art is borrowed, so focus on being authentic through creation. Don't get stuck on trying to be 100% original. That might be impossible. Every ending is a new beginning, even if we don't know it at the time. There are no dead ends, just detours. And remember, one comma changes the whole sentence. Even when the darkness sets in, remember, we are planted, not buried. It's also important to remember that just because you don't know where you're going doesn't mean you're lost. Like Voltaire once shared, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way. Growth is an active choice. It's something that we must choose over and over and over again. There is no growth without discomfort, and comfort is a slow death. Building a life that you love can be an unbeautiful thing. To live a life that most people won't, you have to do things that most people won't. The mess is where the magic happens, and you can't buy effort. So stop avoiding the mess and step into the arena. Of course, I'm going to share one of the best quotes of all time from Theodore Roosevelt, who said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. There might be people who criticize you and don't understand you, and that's okay. Be careful taking advice from people who aren't walking the path that you want to be on. Like Albert Einstein once wrote, great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. The mediocre mind is incapable of understanding the man who refuses to bow blindly to conventional prejudices and chooses instead to express his opinions courageously and honestly. Like Muhammad Ali once said, impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing. Direction is more important than speed. Great things take time, and we have to be willing to play life as a game of decades, not days. We have to be able to be patient with long-term change while we are intentional with short-term action. Over time, consistent effort compounds, and again, little by little, little becomes a lot. To stay on course and avoid being swept away in the currents of what's common, we have to understand our direction. The words of Stephen Covey drive this home, who said, you have to decide what your highest priorities are and have the courage, pleasantly smiling, non-apologetically, to say no to other things. And the way you do that is by having a bigger yes burning inside. While you stay patient, playing the long game, and aligned with the direction you've set, don't forget that nothing in this life is guaranteed. Don't wait too long to do what matters most. Hear these words from Jean-Paul Sartre, who said, I have led a toothless life, he thought. A toothless life. I have never bitten into anything. I was waiting. I was reserving myself for later on. And I have just noticed that my teeth have gone. Don't wait too long. Questions are powerful. The questions we ask ourselves matter a lot. If you want a better life, you need to ask better questions. When things happen, stop asking, why me? And start asking, why not me? Like Jim Carrey once said, so many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach and ridiculous to expect, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. Ask for what you want. We need to be willing to ask the hard questions and look in the dark places. That's where we learn the most. That's where we get the most. It's been said that the depth of a man is a limit only he can know, should he have the courage to explore in the dark. You can't connect the dots looking forward. Faith means trusting that the dots will connect even when we can't make sense of it from our limited perspective. Here's a mindset shift. Instead of thinking, what if, think, even if. Instead of what if this goes wrong, think, even if this doesn't go great, I'll figure it out then. Also, remember that what if goes both ways. What if things work out better than you could ever imagine? The truth is, it won't happen how you think it'll happen, and it won't look like you think it'll look. There are no dead ends, just detours. Things will happen how they are supposed to happen. Like Jean de La Fontaine once said, a person often meets his destiny on the road he took to avoid it. This Charles Spurgeon quote also hits home for me. He said, God is too good to be unkind, and he is too wise to be mistaken. And when we cannot trace his hand, we must trust his heart. Character is something that we cultivate with each choice that we make. Even the small, seemingly insignificant choices that happen behind closed doors alter the person that we're becoming, and as a result, send out ripples to everyone we'll ever know. It sounds extreme, but it's true. Remember that internal work doesn't need to be seen in order to be done or in order to matter. So take a deep breath and choose to be proud of the small personal wins that often go unnoticed. Those are the big wins. Live life like it's on film. It's also important to recognize that our stories are written in public and private moments. This is just a reminder that the moments behind closed doors and the sentences written in secret still matter, because life will reveal the person that we've been creating. This quote from Brooke Westcott expresses it well. She said, "Great occasions do not make heroes or cowards. They simply unveil them to the eyes of man. Silently and perceptibly, as we wake or sleep, we grow strong or weak. And last, some crisis shows what we have become." Time is precious. Memento mori means remember, you must die. This shall pass, and this too shall pass. The hard times pass, and the good times pass. With time, it all passes. So cherish it as best you can, because it won't last forever. For those that feel overwhelmed in this season of life as it relates to time, trust the words of Mikhail Lermontov, who said, "Many a calm river begins as a turbulent waterfall, yet none hurtles and foams all the way to the sea. With time, it'll calm." And remember that the two most important times are forever and now. A phrase that brings conviction on most days for me is that yesterday you said tomorrow. And if you keep saying you'll start tomorrow, you'll run out of tomorrows before you start. As it's been said, the variable is not whether or not the future will arrive. The choice that we have is what version of ourselves will show up to meet that future. True wealth isn't having everything. True wealth is needing nothing. That's a simple concept to grasp between the ears, but it's another thing to put into practice. Just remember that your definition of success can look different than the world around you. So here's another reminder that if you want to make a difference in the world, you need to be different from the world. You can't stand out and fit in all at the same time. Persistence is a powerful skill. Just because something is taking a long time doesn't mean it's not working. As Jacob Riis once said, "When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stone cutter, hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet, at the 101st blow, it will split in two, and I know it was not that blow that did it, but all that had gone before." Persistence is also beautiful. Like Sarah Kay once said, "There's nothing more beautiful than the way the ocean refuses to stop kissing the shoreline, no matter how many times it's sent away." Refuse to give up on what matters most. If it's worth it, keep working for it. One more quote here from Margaret George, who said, "You must bear losses like a soldier," the voice told me, "bravely and without complaint. And just when the day seems lost, grab your shield for another stand, another thrust forward." That is the juncture that separates heroes from merely the strong. So, in regard to persistence, when it's hard and you're tired, take a breath. and get back up to do it again. It's important to be wrong. The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. Admitting when we are wrong allows us to openly pursue what is right. In fact, being wrong is part of the process in discovering ourselves. We need strong convictions held with a loose grip. Like it's been said, our exploration might not take us where we intended to go, but we must trust that it'll take us where we need to be. As it's also been said, not until we are lost do we begin to find ourselves. So don't be afraid to get a little lost. Confidence is earned, not given. Yes, we build confidence. It's not something that we have. Confidence is cultivated through matching our actions with our words. It's showing up and doing the work on a consistent basis. Confidence is being who we say we are and doing what we say we'll do. Confidence is about keeping promises, especially the ones we make to ourselves. Confidence comes from the inside, not the outside. As Christina Grimm once said, confidence is not, they will like me. Confidence is, I'll be fine if they don't. Sometimes you have to burn the boats and eliminate plan B in order to be all in on the task at hand. Pressure doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's what makes diamonds. When you commit to a path of singular focus, results are a matter of when, not if. Like Michael E. Gerber once shared, the difference between great people and everyone else is that great people create their lives actively, while everyone else is created by their lives, passively waiting to see where life takes them next. The difference between the two is the difference between living fully and just existing. Once again, going all in on what makes you come alive invites the risk of being misunderstood, but don't let that stop you. Be unreasonable, because as George Bernard Shaw once said, the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. Have some fun. It doesn't need to be that serious. All of the points to this point have been serious, but it doesn't have to be serious all of the time. Going back to the idea of perspective, there's no such thing as bad weather, just a bad attitude. The next time it rains, forget the umbrella. Go jump in some puddles. Part of having fun involves pursuing our potential. Getting better is fun, so don't hold back. As Hunter S. Thompson once said, life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, wow, what a ride. Go have some fun. Last, God is good. And I couldn't do any of what I do without him. Faith holds it all together. For me, this is a big one, and I'm not sure how people thrive without it. As C.S. Lewis once said, faith is the art of holding on to things in spite of your changing moods and circumstances. It might sound cliche because it's used often, but to me, it is so true. Everything happens for a reason, even if you never get to know what that reason is. I'll share a Bible verse that has stuck with me for a while now, and a story that I came across just this past week to wrap up this podcast episode. The Bible verse speaks to me for obvious reasons. It is 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 7 through 9. And it says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. The story that I'll share is one that has changed me in a short period of time. It's reframed a truth that I've known for the entirety of my life, but it just makes so much sense to me. And I want to preface this by saying that if you are not a person of faith, this story applies to you just as much as it applies to me. This story is about choosing. It's about decisions. It's about intentions. It's about who we are becoming. The story goes as follows. There was a man standing in a field, staring at a fence that split it in two. On one side was Satan, and the other, God. The man wanted to both indulge in temptation and in the promises of God. In an effort to avoid choosing one side of the fence and losing the benefit of the other, the man decided to sit on the fence. Thinking he cheated the game and outsmarted both sides, he laughed. And then the lights went off. From the darkness, Satan emerged. In terror, the man gasped for breath and shouted, "No, no, no, Satan, I didn't choose you." In that moment, Satan grabbed the man, pulled him hard, and said, "The fence belongs to me. Don't sit on the fence. If you're not all in, you're all out. Choose what's right, even when it's hard, because there are consequences for all of us when we choose what's easiest, comfortable, convenient, or popular, just because we don't want to be uncomfortable. There are so many more lessons, so much deeper to go. For the sake of this podcast episode, I think this is a good place to stop. It is past my bedtime, and I am surprised I was able to get through all of this. I hope that it made sense. And as I close here, I just want to start by thanking you. Thank you so much for listening to these words and for supporting our mission. Even if I don't know you yet, I would love to start a conversation and invite you into what we're creating with open arms. There's a place here for everyone, and we're here for whatever you need. I've got a good feeling about 2025, and I hope you do too. With so much love, do hard things. I'll talk to you next time. If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.